Governance is an enabler. You want to do things right and fast. The traditional understanding of governments is you end up doing things right, but then you end up things being slow. The advantage of cloud is velocity. The advantage of cloud is speed. The advantage of cloud is getting there faster than ever before.
Talking about security, right? I mean, I think that's also a very big challenge, right? For instance, I had one of our customers there in healthcare and they had a big security breach. That was an AWS instance, but we didn't even know that that was happening. So how do you deal with that, right? Let's say I'm a distributor or a manufacturer. What are some of the basics I need to take care in terms of security?
First of all, security, but it needs to be everybody's challenge or everybody's responsibility. The cloud providers basically provide basic security guardrails, not an outcome. It's a guardrail given to you as part of the services they offer. Turning off the guardrail, turning on the guardrail, defining the limits of the guardrail is all left to the customer. CoreStack is a true multi-cloud platform that starts with an assessment of what is your current maturity of using the cloud. What's your business? In which regions, which countries, which geographies are you operating in? And what are the regulatory requirements about that from a regulatory standpoint or from a geography standpoint or from a compliance standpoint? And then how well are you using it for performance, availability, cost, automation, all of that dimension, and gives you a blueprint of, hey, today's maturity is this. And based on the technology you've already chosen, what is the gap that you have and how much can we quickly address?
How can we learn from the leaders, educators, and experts in our industry? What can we take away from their successes and failures? How can we apply this to our businesses, our careers, and our lives? This is what we are here to find out. I'm your host, Karthik Chidambaram, CEO of DC Cap. We make systems, talk to each other for manufacturers and distributors. I love to learn and share that knowledge with others. This podcast is about having meaningful conversations that we can all learn from. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy this conversation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of Driven by DC Cap podcast. So we have with us Ez Natarajan, founder and CEO of a cloud governance company, CoreStack. Ez, thank you so much for joining me on the Driven Show.
Oh, thank you, Karthik, for inviting me to the show. Happy to be in the show and sharing whatever I can share for the viewers.
Ez, tell us about cloud governance or CoreStack, right? So what is, for the audience who are not very familiar with CoreStack, what is the core of CoreStack? What does CoreStack do? So CoreStack is
basically a SaaS platform that helps end customers or enterprises to use technologies with confidence. When I say technology, specifically cloud technologies offered by Microsoft, AWS, Google, or two, to build their business applications with confidence that gives in security, optimized performance, and business outcomes that increases the velocity of the end customer who's using the technology to build their business the next stages.
So, but let's say I am a cloud user or I'm an AWS customer, or let's say a user, sure, right? So one of my challenges always has been the rising cost, right? So they say, they get me an, hey, I can get you a free account, I start using you for free. I remember this even at our company at DCCAT. Suddenly, 1 month, we had a very hefty bill, and that some instance was running, and maybe our team did not notice or something like that, right? So why does this problem happen, and do you guys saw that?
Well, that's sort of the very basic foundational problems that we address as part of our CoreStack. One of the product we call it as FinOps. It basically addresses, how effectively are you using the cloud? Are you paying for the value that you're getting? And is there any scope for you to optimize your spend without compromising the outcomes that you're getting, right? So that kind of covers it. But it's a trap. Like cloud providers, they get you with free accounts and these subscriptions and want to use the cloud, and you start building your applications in the cloud. And eventually you find that now I am in a position of not being able to move out, and I have to end up paying. So you don't want to move out because the technology is not valuable. You want to move out because you consider the cost you're paying is probably higher than what you think would pay with other providers, or what is the value that you're getting as return on investment. CoreStack solves that return on investment problem for you, exploiting the underlying technology, getting the customers the best outcome of whatever the technology they have chosen to use, if you feel confident that I'm getting the best, but there's nothing you're going to feel that, hey, am I overpay? Because that's the best you get. So we solve the missing dimension of, are you getting the best?
And do you guys cater primarily to larger customers, or do you also cater to mid-market customers?
Our sweet part, I would say, is Fortune 1 to Fortune 25,000 customers, right? Today, as part of go-to-market, we work with these segments of channels and partners in the ecosystem. We work with managed service providers. We work with world's largest distributors. We work with the systems integrators and the global large systems integrators. We work with the WASH. So based on the kind of channel that leverages the technology to create the value for end customers, we end up catering to SMC or SME to upper mid-market to typical enterprise. Again, Fortune 5,000, if you put it on enterprise segment, the remaining you put it on a SMC, SME segment. That's what we cater to. But largely our market is primarily through channels and partners.
So at DC Cloud, we work with a lot of distributors, right? So distributors is our core market, large distributors and no-market distributors as well. But these distributors, they a lot of times have legacy systems, and one of the things they're trying to do is say they want to move to the cloud. And let's say I want to move to the cloud. I'm a distributor. I want to move to the cloud. I have three options, right? Broadly: Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and then there's also Oracle and other providers, right? How do I know which one to choose?
This is a big question because most of the times, unless you are a greenfield startup or a new generation company that is starting on cloud, the question of how do I choose is answered intrinsically by what they're already doing, how they are doing, and what are the choices they have to leverage the newer technology. Right? In our case, we see more than 70% of the enterprise customer base of Fortune 1,000 is brownfield. They are started in the last 10 years only. There are companies that started, grown big in the last 10 years, but most of the customers have had histories pre-cloudish. So they had business applications, they had their workflows, they had their services, and the choice of what technology to choose has been very easy for them, right? But how do I transition to that? The complexity lies there. The choice of where do I transition, that becomes easier. Whereas for the greenfield companies, technically, as you said, right, hey, who gives me the compute or the cloud services at the low cost? That becomes the initial driver. But that becomes a trap for you to get in and it's trapped on the technology. But now with the true multi-cloud architecture, multi-cloud thought process, and the fact that it's way understood today, hey, you don't want to be with just one cloud technology for reasons of cost alone, rather than cost of value that is getting created. So today, some of the services available is outstandingly great compared to the competitive providers, right? Same with Microsoft, same with even BigQuery is the top selling services for Google, right? So the choice of what do I want to use, I think in the greenfield companies, based on what they want to achieve, and all of them have technology experts who either in-house or an advisor, a partner who actually drives the technology for them, advising them, hey, you need to broadly choose this technology. What CoreStack does is, how can you extract or maximize the value of the technology that you have chosen? One dimension. The second dimension is, what is the glass ceiling that is available on the technology that you cannot get anything more? You extracted the maximum out of it. If you're continuing to choose or extract more, or you want more outcome, then probably your decision on the technology needs to be revisited. And that, because we go to, we create value for the end customer through partners, the partners, it eases or it makes the job of the partner easier to advise the customer, to counsel the customer, to show them what is the alternate path that is available and all of that shots. So we truly become an, truly agnostic platform in terms of not suggesting what you should use, rather than how to maximize the outcome of a technology that a customer has already chosen.
Okay, so the customer chooses the technology and you try to maximize the outcome based on the technology the customer chooses, right? But on the cloud, let's say I choose AWS, and then for the same application, can I also choose Azure?
Yes, there are customers in the enterprise segment, and even in the mid-market, we see that hey, they truly build, business continuity and, availabilities of the 949s, or even some of the applications are going to like media airtime or gaming. We see that 5 nines of availability is needed because even one night of availability causes them, a few $1 million of business for them. So they're willing to pay a little more and build resilience across platforms. And with, advent of now containers across the platforms, more and more containers are coming in. So you can run this EKS or AKS, does not matter. So the decision of wanting to run on multiple platforms to meet the sovereignty requirements if they are geographically in different countries, to build the business continuity from availability standpoint, or even to meet the regulatory requirements, right? I know if you're in Europe, you cannot have the data move around. So there are regulations, there are sovereignty, there are performance, even cost for that matter becomes a driver to choose between the tutorial ways.
And CoreStack helps with that in terms of, let's say, I run multiple platforms. CoreStack helps with that as well.
Yes, CoreStack is a true multi-cloud platform that starts with an assessment of what is your current maturity of using the cloud. What's your business? In which regions, which countries, which geographies are you operating in? And what are the regulatory requirements for that from a regulatory standpoint, or from a geography standpoint, or from a compliance standpoint? And then how well are you using it from a performance, availability, cost, automation, all of that dimension? And it gives you a blueprint of, hey, today's your maturity is this. And based on the technology you've already chosen, what is the gap that you have and how much can we quickly, address? And then you first got to build the gap, right? Once the partners actually help build the gap, then comes the choice of, how do I increase the velocity? If I have to get more outcome, if I have to, increase my throughput, if I have to increase my performance, if I have to add more customers, if I have to add, more regions, what do I need to do? What technology is best? And that comes the next piece.
And choosing the platform also depends on the skill set, right? I mean, obviously, if I'm very good at AWS, then I also need to learn Azure. There needs to be a different thing for Azure, right? So all that comes into play as well, for sure.
In the last 5 years, if you look at Karthik, it was talent as being one of the key drivers of choosing a technology based on customers' existing investments on their people, right? More and more what we see is the acceptance of multi-cloud is becoming very vibrant with the technology providers themselves. A few years ago, AWS wouldn't have accepted multi-cloud, right? So, but whether it's like Microsoft or Google, okay, accepted it, yeah. But now all the cloud providers accept that the reality is, hey, I have to coexist with other technology. And that has allowed the knowledge ecosystem to build on a natural basis. So today, you find a talent in the market, you definitely will find a talent who knows cloud, not just one cloud. It's probably at least 2 clouds, though not more. Once you know the capabilities and how to leverage, how to use, how to manage the basic services of 2 clouds, learning third, fourth is not a big challenge, right? So knowledge as such from an employee standpoint is not a key driver to choose a technology. However, there may be an additional investment that is required if you've chosen a technology that's not in the company, not being used, and you chose it for specific business reasons, then you need to actually augment additional investments of training and elevating the employees. And that is where the partners come in, right? So when the cloud providers accepted multi-cloud, now the partner ecosystem has truly moved. And that is where CoreStack kind of platforms thrive, because we are a true agnostic multi-cloud platform committed to deliver or committed to maximize the value of the cloud for the customer through the partners. So we have capabilities for the partners who, partners can use that to deliver the value, and the value on a true multi-cloud delivered to the customers. So it becomes an easy outcome for see the best value by us.
So we talk about maximizing outcome. Can you also talk a little bit about cloud governance? What essentially is cloud governance, and why do I need it there?
And we coined this term cloud governance 6 years back, right?
It was you guys,
so
right?
CoreStack, thanks to my CTO for coining this word about cloud governance, because back then the industry was talking about cloud management, that even Gartner had a modern cloud management there today. Some thoughts about cloud management. So we have been taking the industry to understand cloud governance. This governance at some point of time has been thought as, hey, it's a velocity reducer. You put roadblocks, at the moment you talk about governments. But what we said was, governance is an enabler. You want to do things right and fast, right? But the traditional understanding of governance is you end up doing things right, but then you end up things being slow. But cloud, the advantage of cloud is velocity. The advantage of cloud is speed. The advantage of cloud is, getting there faster than ever before. And if you don't have governance on that, then you're going to, compromise many things. It can be security, it can be business, it can be money, it can be, your reputation. There are a lot of things around it, right? How can you put a governance on a system that is fast moving? Cloud itself is fast moving. It's high velocity. When you say, I want govern the fast moving stuff, it cannot be reducing the speed. And that's where we said, we want to introduce cloud governance, and we defined the basic tenets of governance. Cloud governance to us means building the C-level or C-suite of a company who are very critical for the business to perform. So who are those C-suites? A CFO comes in, a CIO comes in, a CTO comes in, a Chief Information Officer comes in. So these are 3 or 4 people who are core for the business to function. I have head of product and development. I have head of technology. I have head of finance, and I have head of security compliance coming together. See the elephant or a dinosaur with a single source of truth. In the market, because governance was not defined for the management, there have been a lot of point solutions, and those point solutions led to multiple sources of truth. And the C-suite has always been looking at a multi-source of truth and never been able to make conscious, consensual decision that will move the velocity forward, or that will move the business forward. What CoreStack did was, we said, our cloud governance is going to address the financial part of it. It's going to address the automation, availability, performance part of it. It's going to address the security and compliance part of it. As a 3 basic tenets. And any new services customers want to use. Even today, the last 4 months after the advent of the Gen AI, there have been a lot of AI services. Let's call it as new generation of computing capabilities that are coming in. Those need to be used in a cohesive way that delivers outcome. And we said, this defines cloud governance. And this brings the C-suite that I talked about, CFO, CIO, CDO, CISOs come together to solve the business problem. That's how the holistic cloud governance thought leadership emerged. And we continue to believe that we are moving the needle, because all the industry is talking about cloud governance. Now, if you see AWS leaders, they go to the stage, they talk about, hey, how governance is important. You see that from Microsoft, you see that from Google. So we take pride in saying that, we coined that word first.
So essentially, you created a category with governance, right?
Cloud governance, yes.
Yeah. And talking about security, right? I mean, I think that's also a very big challenge, right? For instance, I had one of our customers there in healthcare, and they had a big security breach, right? And that was an AWS instance, but we didn't even know that was happening, right? So it's actually a mistake from our end as well. So how do you deal with that? And let's say I'm a distributor, okay, or a manufacturer. What are some of the basics I need to take care in terms of security?
First of all, security, needs to be everybody's challenge, right? Or everybody's responsibility. The cloud providers basically provide basic security guardrails, not an outcome. It's a guardrail given to you as part of the services they offer. Turning off the guardrail, turning on the guardrail, defining the limits of the guardrail is all lent to the customer. When it comes to securities, most of the times what happens is when you don't have a continuous guardrail validation ecosystem, nobody starts bad. You buy a new refrigerator or buy a new TV, you don't mishandle it in the first week, second week, third week. But then when everybody in the household starts using it, that's when some settings change, some display modes change, all of that happens, right? So it's the same thing that happens in the cloud world, where after a few weeks, few releases, few engineering updates that are happening, the guardrail that you set from a security standpoint, say, in this case that you talked about, and encryption and then, authorization, authentication mechanism, which is truly validated, could have stopped this from happening. I'm sure day one, there was authorization, authentication, and encryption. That was all there. Someday, some point of time, the authorization could have been, revoked for some tactical reason, or encryption could have been revoked for some technical reason. And then the report, no, that's it. Then onwards, you are less equipped surface, which is going to compromise you. And obviously the attackers are out there, ramming everybody, and when they find a vulnerability, that's it, you are getting exposed. So that is where CoreStack comes into the picture. What we guarantee as part of our SecOps offering is continuous, and not just on our SecOps. CoreStack platform is a continuous cloud owners platform, first of all, right? You do some things knowingly, unknowingly, the next day, on the next action, on the next trigger point, gets you back to what it was supposed to be from a guardrail standpoint, right? So companies can define my guardrail. Hey, this is my guardrail. This has to be always kept. If you have to create an exception to break the guardrail for some reason, tactically, for some period of time, you may fund it going visiting it, but CoreStack takes care of going and putting it back without your knowledge. And that kind of automation ecosystem is not offered by your providers. This companies have to build on their own with the basic capabilities that are being offered, or they have to depend on some tools. If you go with the point solutions, they do it for their dimension. Say a FinOps tool will do it for finance optimization. And you may never overpay a bill, but that would have compromised your securities. That would have compromised your availability. A security solution would never let you, be surprised on a security, but you are going to be surprised by cost the next month. And this is where a single source of truth and integrated platform like CoreStack is needed. And we see the demand more and more and more now, because the unit cloud consumption by a customer per year is on the X at Roski. And that means that customers are spending more money every year. So they want to get an outcome that is optimized across the board, what we define as our own setting.
This has been a fascinating conversation, Easy, learning about cloud governance, at least for me, right? It's like cloud governance 101. So that's been great. I'm sure it's for the audience as well. I would like to end with this question. How do you keep yourself updated, or what book are you reading right now?
Reading has been one of a tired passion, I would say, but getting time to read is a challenge. The latest book I'm reading, I've been advised by many of our well-wishers, is Built to Last by Jim Collins. I'm reading them right now. But there are some books I mentioned that for people, there's a one side for reading, that moved me to do things in a little better way. One thing that I say for anyone who wants to improve their productivity and get a better outcome over a period of time, read the book called Compound Effect. That's a very questioning thought process and a mindset that you will build to do things on a continuously better way. The other book, if you want to change your lifestyle, if you want to, you can do anything, just need of your technology. If you want to change your life forever, one must read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Conspiracy Submarriage. The version 2 or the second Conspiracies of the Rich is a must-read book if you want to become rich. So,
thanks for these great recommendations, Easy. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and thank you for your time. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Karthik. Really appreciate having me on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining our Driven by DC Cap podcast. Your support means a lot to us. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the like button and subscribe. Consider leaving us a review. Thank you for joining us.